panel discussion on Unlocking India's Gifting Potential. The topic: Challenges and Opportunities in Indian Gifting Market. Insights into regulatory issue sourcing and scaling challenges will explore key aspects such as regulatory hurdles, sourcing concern, and scalability. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Aman R. Jain, founder of the 10th House. He will be moderating this session. Can we have a huge round of applause for Mr. Aman? Oh, I can't hear anyone. Can we have a huge round of applause? Thank you so much. A dynamic entrepreneur with over a decade of diverse experience across fashion, production, and e-commerce. As the founder of Ace Craft and the 10th House, he combines strategic business acumen with creative innovation to build impactful brands. His entrepreneur journey reflects a deep understanding of market dynamics and customer experience. Now, I would like to invite our esteemed speakers, Mr. Naresh Devda, partner of Fuso. Can we have a huge round of applause for Mr. Naresh? With over 15 years of experience, Naresh has built Fuso on the pillars of transparency, innovation, and functional design. He also leads True Global Brands. As an active member of the Corporate Gifts Association of India, he champions collaboration and learning to elevate the industry. Next, we have Mr. Dheeraj Jain, Director of Magnus Kado India Private Limited. Managing Director of Magnus Kado India Private Limited, a leading corporate gifting company with a strong presence across 6 offices in India. Dheeraj is known for his people-first approach, sharp business acumen, and ability to drive innovation and long-term growth. Next, we have Mr. Samit Jain, Director of Be Home. Can we have a huge round of applause? Thank you. Mr. Jain is the Director of the brand Be Home. Be Home offers a curated selection of premium imported drinkware, houseware, and desktop products from across Asia, operating on a B2B model. Samit Jain's motto is to grow the corporate gifting industry by managing every aspect from sourcing to delivery. Next, we have Mr. Riaz Khatri, founder and managing director of IDMA Private Limited. Can we have a huge round of applause? With over 15 years of experience, Riaz has driven strategic collaborations with top brands like Trident, Godrej Consumer Products, Tata Consumer Products, and ITC. His industry expertise and entrepreneur vision have enabled IDMA growth across B2B, e-commerce, exports, and integrated warehousing solution. Next, we have Mr. Pranay Punjabi, founder and CEO of Zek Technologies Private Limited. Can we have a huge round of applause? Pranay's leadership has propelled Zek from early stage prototypes to patented innovations backed by a strong direct-to-customer D2C infrastructure. A certified commercial pilot and former competitive chess player, he brings strategic insight and sharp precision to every endeavor. Now it's time to begin the conversation we have been waiting for.
Well, thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure to have all of you guys on the same panel. And in fact, it feels really, I resonate quite well because just this last year I was sitting on the panel side and today I get a chance to ask questions. So what else can you really ask for? Well, now that the corporate gifting dynamics have been changing over a decade and you guys have been industry stalwarts, you had experience of, 10, 15, 20 years in this business and in this trade. You guys really understand what corporate gifting means, how this entire industry has evolved in some time. So I want each one of you to, quickly take 30 seconds to bring your opinion or your opinion as to how things have evolved and where are we heading to. So we'll start with Mr. Nareshji, if you can help us out with that.
So beauty of the industry, I'll start by saying, Aman said, stalwarts of the industry, they know the industry well. To be very honest with you, the industry is so dynamic. Regardless of the fact you spend 20 years in the industry, every day is a new challenge. It's a new experience. and probably you're learning from zero. Your team is teaching you a lot of things. Your client are teaching you a lot of things. So it is dynamic. It keeps you on your toes. There is no boring day, and that's the best part of the industry. And industry has evolved. Industry has changed. Moving from a basic regular product where a notebook, pen, a cap or a t-shirt, a bag, to a lot of innovative tech, sustainable, a lot of new words have come into the industry. So it is exciting, it is innovative, and I'm telling you, we are bound for some great changes in the industry. And let's look forward to some amazing times. A lot of things for all of us to learn, experience, and grow with.
Thank you very much. We'd like to hear from Mr. Dheeraj, what his take has been on this entire conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Aman bhai. And as Naresh bhai rightly mentioned, there has been drastic changes, and as time comes, we will see drastic changes in towards sustainability. We have seen all our clients globally sending us out mails, telling that we have to become completely sustainable in terms of our packaging, in terms of what products we offer to them. So today, sustainability is not just a CSR activity; it is like more of a business strategy, where they want to implement it and take it very seriously. And this change is very important for all us, for all of us to grow, take it as a challenge, and implement it in our business. And every day there's a challenge, you can say a learning, and definitely it is exciting.
Well, when you talk about excitement, I'm sure corporate gifting industry has always been a lot of uncertainty, and with uncertainty also comes a lot of excitement. So it always keeps you on the edge. Now let's make this conversation a little more interesting, and let me bring the audience up to speed as to how this entire flow of conversation and this entire session is going to take shape. So I have kind of divided this session to 4 halves. So we have 4 quarters. First 15 minutes, we talk about the market landscape and the emerging trends in the industry. And the second quarter, the next 15 minutes, we talk about sourcing, imports, and the compliances that are related to the same gifting industry. On the third quarter, we also talk about scaling. When it comes to tech, teams, and operations, what are the challenges you really face when it comes to scaling of the business? And the final quarter, that is the last 15 minutes, we are going to be talking about the road ahead. That is the vision and the collaboration that we as the industry should do with each other to take this business to the next level. So my question to Mr. Samitji is going to be next. And I like to ask him, your work with premium imported gifting items, how has the demand evolved in the recent years, Samitji?
Yeah, thanks, Amin, for giving this chance to speak. Everybody, thank you once again. It's a great opportunity I see every day, every morning, because import itself is so exciting and innovative every day, because every day your customer comes out with new budget, new products. Kuch hatke do yaar. So that hatke, you try getting new stuff, you try sourcing new things. So it's a fun. I mean, you start loving, this becomes your passion, not your job. So this import, I love import very much, because every day you have multiple products, multiple region, multiple country you can go through. It's not limited to a region. So it's fun sourcing, it's fun delivering it, and that's a good part. That's a good challenge.
But when you really look at 2 years, 5 years back then, and the consumer taste today, where do you find the difference?
We are global now. I mean, the sourcing, the exposure to the new generation is huge. I mean, it's a one click, right? Earlier, they used to go in the books, yellow pages, this, blah, blah, blah. So it was whatever was delivered, they was been taken. Now, whatever they want, you have to deliver. That's the change we see. The whole platform has changed. So it's an exposure, and it's a good. India's growing. We are growing. We are on a global page, which we were not earlier. Now, I mean, everybody, the countries make the products which India needs now. Earlier, there was whatever they make, we used to get it. See, I see this difference over a period of time, which is really good.
So that's a very, very big shift. Now the businesses have evolved more consumer-centric rather than what I make is what I sell.
True.
So today I understand what my customer needs and I produce the products what you really need as a customer. So that shift is what I really understand.
True.
Your conclusion has been about.
We have come to this point. Earlier the seller was a king. Now the whole concept is buyer is a king. If you understand this slogan, you are successful in your life.
But back in those days, in fact, I still remember that my grandfather used to write outside his shop. मतलब हिंदी में कहा जाता है consumer is king, customer is king. That was always there. But I somehow feel that now it's really evolved.
It was always there, but still we never used to believe that, because whatever the seller used to get the goods in my stock, in my warehouse, the buyer used to buy it. Now the concept has changed. The what buyer need, I make it accordingly in his budget, in his packaging, and then I deliver it. So now it has been true that customer is really a king.
Right. Makes sense. I think moving forward, when
Thank
we
you.
talk about evolving trends, I'll have my next question to Mr. Pranay. And the question is quite simple, and I think it should have it at a tip of your fingers, though. So, is consumer tech the new premium? What are today's expectations from the modern corporate gift?
Hi, thanks for having me here. And I do feel consumer tech is the new premium because rather than like a conventional corporate gift, if you get a very exciting electric tiffin box which heats your food in 2 minutes, or like a product which makes ice cream in 10 minutes, it's more of an experience for the customer. And whenever you have a experience, it's emotional, so you remember it. And the logo on the product and the company giving it, they're doing it to advertise their logo anyway, right? So they keep remembering the company and probably have more loyalty to the company. So I think the cooler the product, the more unique the product, the more it hits the customer receiving the product. So yes.
So, it's more of the wow effect that, is lasting longer.
Yes.
I think that is what you're trying to
Anything
implement.
that surprises or shocks the customer receiving it, I think makes an impact.
So every product which is more tech centric is something that's always going to create wow to the customer.
Yeah, because it's never seen before, right? So they're like, wow, yeah.
Nice. I like to have deeper conversations with you moving forward. And next, I like to move to Mr. Riyaz Khatri, and he's had a rich experience in distribution and has been worked with some of the top brands to deal with across the country. And I like to understand your quick understanding of how the business has evolved in the last 5 years, and where do you think this is headed to?
Thank you, Aman Bhai, for this question. And if you talk about brands like, My Trident or Godrej Consumers or Tata, so all these brands are aspirational brands for people in the market. Maybe a person of the CEO level also has it in his home, and a person who is a middle class or an upper middle class person will also perceive these brands and use it in their home. So for us, marketing has never been a challenge for these products. The biggest challenge has been service. Because when you talk about FMCG products or when you talk about big brands, sourcing of these products has always been a challenge, and price dynamics has always been a challenge. Because these are all retail oriented brands and these are more GT specific brands where all price points are through the GT. So when a B2B order...
What do you mean by GT for our
GT
audience?
is general trade. So when you talk about bigger brands, bigger FMCG or bigger large brands, like you talk about My Trident, their turnover, across turnover is around 9,000 crores annually that they do, where around 6,500 crores is exports, 3,500 is Indian distribution market that they do. So these brands are GT specific or general trade specific or modern trade specific brands. We all know how big Tata Consumers is. It is becoming the largest FMCG company in India. It's maybe behind Unilever's or ITC at any given point of time. So these brands, so whenever you people come down into B2B, they expect a very big price difference. So whether it's a 500 pieces order or a 100 pieces order or a lakh piece order. So customer always thinks that if I'm buying such a big quantity, I need a price difference that has to be very different from the market. So convincing the brand, convincing the company to offer better prices in B2B is a challenge because bigger brands don't understand B2B so well. So for them, making them understand that this is a free market product where you're not marketing the product, but it is reaching 10,000 customers across the country without spending a single penny. Then giving prices and giving deliveries on times, because their first way of sending the material is we'll go to GT, we'll go to modern trade. We don't want to get out of stock over there. B2B comes next for them. But now these bigger brands are also focusing, coming down, doing shows. This year I have Jockey also with me, who is planning to take the business nationally for B2B, where Jockey being in general trade or a retail specific brand, the MRPs are very lower. Now, when you get into corporates, you see that you need higher MRP products where the perception is higher. Now, the company is planning to create new SKUs, which could be very great for the market, where you will have an international brand coming in with a specific range for institutions, which the quality and standards remain that of retail, but the prices are higher, where the customer gets a good opportunity, or the customer can see that he's giving a good, highly perceived product. So for me, if you talk about FMCG or bigger brand, for me the biggest I see it evolving is these bigger brands are taking in a lot of effort to enter the corporate gifting space, because earlier what used to happen, these orders, specific regional orders, were all being taken by local distributors. They never used to come to the company specific or to an institutional distributor specific. Now companies creating different channels where all of this institution business is routed through the channelized partners.
So let me kind of summarize. Is what you're trying to say is back in those days there was no institutional division as such in all these brands. Today, the brands themselves have understood and realized that there is a need for an institutional division to make sure that their needs are catered in the right and a specific manner.
Absolutely.
So that has been a big change. And the second good input you kind of put a light on was it's totally turned service oriented.
Yes.
So today, more than product, it's more of service that really defines the customer's experience is what really defines, and this is what is going to take the business to the next level. Thank you so much. Now that we finished the first quarter of our discussion, let's move on to the second one. Now that all of us have been importing products from across the world, we've also been producing products in-house with different facilities and different factories and different vendors. The second quarter of our discussion is more about sourcing, imports, and the compliances that go with it. So I'd like to ask this first question to Mr. Dheeraj. How do you ensure, no, first let me go to Pranay, in fact. What sourcing and compliance bottlenecks have you experienced? How did you solve or work around them?
Okay. So, first of all, in 2021, there was a big India-China problem. There was an issue at the border. They, in fact, stopped imports for about 2 weeks. They didn't clear any containers. So that was a big wake-up call for us that we need to shift manufacturing to India. So we started visiting many factories who assemble electronics. But the style that B2B brands work is, okay, we have a 20,000 piece order now, and then maybe after 4 months, right? So, but these guys are not ready to work in that style. They want a consistent projection. They want okay, give me 10,000 pieces per month throughout the year, then I'll take your order. Then after searching many factories, we found some factories who are ready to work in our style, the B2B style. But they are not professional. There are molding marks on injection molding. The assembly is not proper. Wires are loose. Packaging. So we really, really had to train them, and it took years of pushing them to get them to a certain standard, which is still 50% of China. I know everyone has a thing against China, but they actually are fabulous in manufacturing, finishing, everything. And since 2 years, the government of India has stopped giving out BIS and ISI to any Chinese factories. So, and March 26, 2026 is the last day to import. After that, you only can assemble in India. So currently, we are going through a transition to get this done. It's extremely challenging. I hope we end up doing it. Yeah.
Wow, now that was an interesting piece of information, and I really didn't know about that. So thank you so much for that. Let's move on to Mrs. Samit. You've been importing directly from Asian countries, and how do you plan for custom clearances now that Pranay said that BIS has been banned from China, and it is compulsory for Indian bottle makers and appliance makers to have BIS norms to be followed? What is your plan of action? How are you going to really fulfill that compliance from the government?
As of now, from government, there compliance, there is no support. They have implemented the rule. It's called BIS, right? Bureau of Indian Standard. You have to get a particular product. What a standard has been designed by the Indian government. Agreed. The standard is good. It's good for the people, right? But at least you start issuing the BIS, right? The waiting period is almost 2 years, 2.5 years. Do you think any industry without a BIS for 2 years can survive? Not possible. So it's too much of challenges. Government support is little less. agree. You put all the specifications what you need, but please start issuing it. But whatever the relations across country has, we are facing tough challenges to clear the goods. Another is like we want to procure from local, but there is no support from local factories because their quality, their assurance, their quantity, delivering time, they don't pick up calls, they don't लेना है तो लो यही है. This attitude, it's been killing customers' taste, which we are not in for actually. So there are a lot of challenges, Aman, but we are hoping, I mean, maybe it reaches to government and government dilutes the delivering time of BIS, and again we can come up hugely with the great products again.
Makes sense. So I think you and Pranay both resonate to the same concept of India. The culture of Indian manufacturers is not at its peak. As much as we have, what do you say, a gray side for China that no, let's make in India. But China is China for a reason. As much as we don't like Chinese, but there is a lot of culture. If we are able to at least bring that to India, I am sure we can bring about a lot of change in the Indian market as well.
Aman, I think what I'll tell you, the biggest thing I think in the world or in China or India is your attitude. The Chinese people have a beautiful attitude towards business. Their priority is customer, their priority is business, their priority is commitment. All three things we lack in India. Today now when I'm approaching Indian countries, they say, sir, dekhenge, batayenge. So now see their attitude. It's a big opportunity for them. A brand like a B-Home is coming to you for a procurement. It is an opportunity, but they're just getting lame it and they're losing the customer. 6 months I'll get a BIS, then who? Which factory? Why would I go back again? So this is the way. We need to change our attitude, Aman.
Makes sense.
And this attitude of Chinese is amazing.
I totally resonate to that. I'm looking forward. I don't know how soon are we going to do that, but I'm really looking forward to this one. Well, let's move on to Nareshji. Now that we're having a very, very interesting and a deep conversation and a lot of light for myself to reflect upon, and I'm sure a lot of audience must also be enjoying this conversation. I also do see a lot of sad faces here and some people who are not able to understand and resonate with what we are discussing. But I also see a lot of smiling faces out there at the back. So for those who the value has been added, trust me guys, ये जो सेशन हो रहा है आप सबके सामने बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण और इम्पोर्टेंट सेशन है क्योंकि आपके सामने जो दिग्गज बैठे हैं they're very, very highly qualified and they understand the industry in and out. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of experience right in front of you in less than 60 minutes. What more could you ask for? Well, moving forward, let me talk to Nareshji over here and ask him this question. How do you ensure your custom branding gifting items are compliant with brands and regulatory requirements? So you've been working with brands in India, brands from out of India. What are the regulatory norms these brands ask for and how do you really compliant with these?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would want to take one step backward and I want to also address a couple of points which my fellow panelists have addressed to already. See, the difference between India and China primarily is China works with the concept that business comes first, as one of my fellow panelists mentioned. But the amount of professionalism that China offers, when they say that they work for 8 hours, they work for 10 hours. Or I would not want to make it sound crude. जब हम इंडिया में बोलते हैं 8 घंटे का काम है, 8 hours of working time, we literally work for 4-5 hours. We have tea break, coffee break, toilet breaks, sutta breaks. So the quality of output that we get in India compared to the quality of output that we get in China, there is humongous difference. So where they are doing a fabulous job is they are able to deliver great results. So yes, we are having a lot of issues with the government in terms of compliances issue. There's no clarity from the government in terms of, every time, every state, every port works differently. We as in India, as a country, believe in Jugaad. So Jugaad is extremely strong here. We got to move out of that mindset. We have to understand that we can blame the government to a certain extent, but honestly speaking, it's also the attitude of us, we the people of India, that needs to change. We need to understand that if we really need to take the country forward, we need to understand that we need to start thinking long term. We need to start understanding that quality is important. customer is important. We believe that customer is the king, but trust me, it does not work that way on the manufacturing side. For a manufacturer, he still is the king. He owns the machine, he owns the production line, he calls the shots. It is not the customer who calls the shots there. So that is where again a big change happens. All these guys sitting here, they do not work with smaller quantities. They probably are doing anywhere between 1 million to 5 million units a year. Okay, and that is no small number. But for a factory working in India, it is a big challenge. They do not understand delivery timelines. They do not understand quality commitments. They do not understand, that we represent a brand. For us, that brand is my everything. It is not just my business, it's my passion, right? They do not understand this. They do not resonate with this. And places like this is where China stands out. You might be starting with a smaller order. They understand what your business is all about. See, one more very big change that has happened. We are the third largest consumer-oriented economy in the world. We have the largest population in the world. So, say 10 years, 15 years back, China was making for the US, for the UK, for the European markets, the Australian markets. Today, they are talking about Indian markets, which is a great change that is happening. And with that great change, we have a bottleneck like compliances. So, see, none of us are worried about the compliance. We are more than happy to follow the compliances. We're more than happy to move our production to India. We are die-hard Indians, right? We want to make our products here. But unfortunately, we are not able to do it by 100%. All of us, I'm confident even without asking them, I'm telling you, all of us are putting in every little effort to ensure that we are manufacturing here. Even if it's a 1% more than I did yesterday, I want to move it back here. So there is a lot of effort happening. I am confident with times to come, things are going to change. So again, going back to the same line that I made, is that we are bound for some amazing times. Government is actually putting in a lot of efforts, to ensure that manufacturing happening in India. Even though the efforts are haphazard, but yes, we are moving towards it. It is going to take us time. Unfortunately, we cannot put a timeline to it, whether it could be 1 year, 5 year, or 10 year. Whether we as a generation are going to see it, or is it the next generation who's going to really experience the manufacturing boom in India? But definitely it's going to happen. It's a matter of time. We cannot stop this to happen. So something that I want to add to the last point. Coming back to the point that Aman just raised, a very interesting thing. So we as a company called True Global Brands, we work with about 12 brands. We work with brands from India, brands international. And the beauty is all of them have different standards. All of them have different guidelines. All of them follow different models. So it is exciting again to understand, you get to learn different cultures. So we work with a brand called Hummel, which is owned by Thornico. It's a Denmark-based company. It's a 100-year-old company. So their logic is, it's not customer first. It is about vendors first. It is about suppliers first. It is about partners first. So, they follow a very different culture. But one thing that is common and that resonates across all brands is that no brand likes to compromise on its brand value. And that is where, channel partners like us come into picture. One of my fellow panelists mentioned that, institutional business as a sector never existed. All the brands were more focused on doing, modern trade, general trade, the Reliances of the world, the Tata Chromas of the world, things like that. So institutional sales as a business, as a sector never existed. But with support from, buyers like the clients, with channel partners, with dealers like yourself, and with brand owners and distribution houses like us, things have changed. The biggest of the biggest brands and the smallest and the newest of the newest brands today want to taste and experience this trade. So that is a very, very, very good change that we are seeing. Norms keep changing, from customers, honestly, more than from the brands is the customers where the norms keep changing. The brands follow a very standard norm where they define to you in terms of, how their branding has to happen, how their logo placements have to happen and things like that. Whereas in terms of the clients that, you guys work with, there are a lot of changes are happening. A lot of new technologies are coming in terms of branding. In fact, a lot of customization, Where right when we started, I think screen printing was the norm. Fabrics, t-shirts ke upar embroidery could have been the next step forward. But today we are talking about DTF. It's nice to see. I was just walking around. We have a lot of companies which here which are specifically only into printing specialities. A lot of new kind of tech which is coming into printing as well. A lot of new technology that is coming into water transfer. There is 3D printing. A lot of new things, a lot of new exciting things. It's not mainstream yet, but yes, it is picking up. It is expensive yet, but I think with time, with the volumes, things are getting better. Things are getting newer. And I think, you guys are doing a fabulous job in terms of, showing and exploring new ideas, getting your clients to work with newer concepts in terms of even customizing and things like that. So yeah, I think kudos to you guys for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Naresh. Now that you put up a good amount of light on challenges you face from companies when it comes to compliances. Now, up next, my question would be for Mr. Riaz. I'm going to keep it very simple. I want to take the distribution for a particular brand. What should I have so that the company or the brand gives me that distribution? Now, for example, so we are into manufacturing of apparels and t-shirts. So I need an order of, 1 million pieces, and it's an export order. And what compliances should I have to make sure I get that order? So I need a SEDEX approval for my factory. I need a Disney approval for my factory. I need ESIPS to be taken care for my factory. Similarly, if you really want to have a brand for you to take care of the institutional sales, what compliances, what strengths should you have so that the brand really comes to you and gives you that opportunity?
I could sum it up in a very short for what would a brand ask me for. So the brand needs to have trust first on that distributor that whatever material you are getting for bulk supplies, they come down to on a special price to you. First thing. So these special price products shouldn't go back to the general trade. So there cannot be any deviation or any undercutting that happens in the market that the material goes back to the general trade because they have an ecosystem that is built over there. So for bigger brands, the market over here would be neither 1% also of their total turnover. So it becomes very sensitive. There are two ways how it is handled. One, they want to enter the industry. Second, they don't want to break the price. So we have to coax them. We need a better price. Then only we'll able to do a bulk order. So of course, if there is a 1,000-piece order, that 1,000-piece order, when it comes to me, has to go to an end customer. This cannot go back into the general trade. So when that trust is developed with the distributor or with the supplier, you will see one after the other, you will have brands that will start adding into his kitty. So if I give you my example, 2019, we got our first brand as Glaxo Consumer, where we had Horlicks, Boost, Oral-B, all of these brands under the kitty. Sensodyne, sorry, not Oral-B. So after one brand coming in, and the market is very small. So each and every business development officer or the area manager of an FMCG company knows area manager of another FMCG company, or a national head knows the another national head. So when they understand that this distributor works in hygiene, works properly, his finances are stable, he manages compliances also on paper. Like suppose if I'm taking Godrej consumers, Godrej has Goodnight, SC Johnson's has All Out. So I need my pesticide licenses to be clear. That is one part. If I am taking Tata consumers, my food licenses, my FDA food licenses have to be there. If I'm repacking that Tata product, I need a food repackaging license.
So you mean to say you have all these licenses to make sure
course.
that,
Yes,
and
yes.
only then you get the distribution of that particular product, is it?
So suppose I have Kenwood, that is Johnson & Johnson, then we have Cipla Limited. So I need to have a DL at my end. These places are also audited by the brand. So J&J does an audit every 18 months. Every 1.5 years, there is a J&J audit that happens at my warehouse. How the stocks have been kept, what temperatures are you using. So there are a lot of points where the companies will come down. They might have a audit that could be a surprise audit also at your warehouse, where they will have a check. They also check your people's background, the people working in your. So when you work with bigger MNCs, the problems are bigger. They will check whether you are paying PF to your laborers or not. What is the minimum wage that they were giving them? Are fire safety norms taken care or not? So if I'm having a space of 40,000 square feet, I need to call the fire department, ask them the number of fire extinguishers I need in the warehouse, and those have to be there. So if I get an audit, I might get a negative marking in the brand audit whenever that happens. So these compliances, so when you are working with MNCs, compliance is the biggest thing that you need to follow. Business comes later.
So, when you talk about compliances, don't you think that this is a pretty expensive affair? You
Of course, it
get
is a
into?
cost. Of course, it is a cost.
So, one is cost of getting the compliance on the first go. Second is the cost of maintaining that compliance for the months and the years to go. And third is again when the audit happens, third party audits happen. So, do you think it's a difficult route to kind of go through, or is it totally worth it?
See, it is a difficult route to go through, but when you get into this, you can multiply with the number of brands that you have, because it is an ecosystem that you have created. Finally, whenever you go to a larger FMCG company or a, MNC, they are not interested in the amount of business that you're going to do for them. They want to see your ecosystem. They want to see how you are running the show. They want to see what is your, when you go out in the market, are you playing with hygiene? Are you working on hygiene? Or are you just undercutting the product? And so these are the factors. So compliances play the biggest part. Business comes later. So they are there with you to grow the business. Because you see marketing for these brands, I don't need to market the product. There is a demand that is already there. There is a need that is already there for these products. I just need to supply. So I'll tell you, when I got into as a distributor for Kenwu, my paperwork went on for 8 months. After 8.5 months, we had signed our agreements.
Oh, that's a lot of patience you need to hold.
Of course. We need to be very patient. We need to answer all their questions. They also have a background check for your whether you have defaulted on any of your credit card payments also. They even check the director's background. That are
You
there,
need to take care of a CIBIL score as well.
yeah, they check your CIBIL score. They check your whether you have a is there been any police NC or an FIR filed against you? Do you have a case or anything? I remember when COVID happened, the first people to in 2020, the first people to connect me with me was GSK, because my father had got COVID in the first few months when COVID had just started. I don't know from where they got the details, and they were the one that since you have COVID in your family, let us know how GSK can be of help, how we can take care, or how we can sum it up. Are you getting a bed or not? Do you need any support on for getting oxygen or anything? So they care for their people also, and they care for their distributors also.
Very nice, very nice. Anybody who's looking forward to take distribution for a particular brand, or understand how this entire compliance or regulatory thing happens, who you need to meet after this session. So that's your man right there, Mr. Riaz. Moving forward, let's move to the third quarter of our program, and the third quarter talks about scaling, technology, team, and operations. So my question is going to be for Dheeraj ji here, straight to him. Technology, team, and operations have always been a problem when it comes to business, and this is the prima facie where the business either skyrockets or is down to the drains. So if your operations, tech, and team are not in place, then your business is definitely not in place. Your business is in trouble. So the question to you is: you operate across 6 cities, or maybe more than that. How do you maintain consistency across locations and vendors? Your teams, operations, and tech. What is really making the difference in your business?
Good question, Aman bhai. Right now we are operating in 6 cities, and we have a team of over 100 people. And obviously everybody starts with a small team in every region. So we have focused more on developing a core team in every region. Our core team is a team where he can be a whole and soul for the company when the company is in that starting phase in that region. And the major challenges in our industry, where with the sales and marketing team, where the employee comes, he thinks that he can do everything by himself and just leave and start his own business and become our competition. But one thing they don't understand is it is not that easy. And when they get into it, they really know how deep the water is. And when slowly we started developing team, we understood that to manage a bigger team, we need core people who are the strength of the company and who are working in that company as that is their own company. So we started with small teams. Slowly we developed in every region, and we have brought in processes to manage all these people. And our core team is the strength which we have in our company, and definitely which is driven by tech. Today we have tech for everything in our company, and to scale, definitely a tech enabled company and a people centric company can only be the future, and that is the way forward, and that is what has to be implemented with immediate effect.
Right. So, like they always say that Ramayana Ram could only win because of Lakshman. So it's really important that with a founder there always has to be a co-founder, and Dheeraj that way has been very, very lucky to have co-founder in his business who has been the core of the business to get the foundation really strong. From that, he's created a small team, a lean team. After that, today he's scaled to 6 cities and 100 people who are working under his leadership. So that's something that's really, really inspiring. And it's been how many years that you've really been into trade?
So it's been 12 years, and as you rightly mentioned, my Lakshman is sitting right there. Is Vivek Jain, and
Can we have the Lakshman waving his hands as well? Yeah, so there.
frankly, because we have that kind of coordination, that kind of understanding, and that kind of support for each other, we could grow. And it is entirely a team of coordination and a team of a completely team effort, which today we are at a stage where we have crossed 100 people. Might be we'll do better, but yeah, this is the only way forward. Just hold hands together and everything is very easy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Samitji, next up. As your business has grown, what's been like the toughest part of business? Is it managing people? मतलब आज एक बंदा आया सीख के he started his own business, or is it technology which helps you scale your business across the globe, or what is the real struggle in your business that stops you from going to the next level? Audience would really love to know.
Struggle is only profit. That's a challenging part, because every time you set a margin, okay, you set a margin according to this, but the customer in our trade, we are into B2B, keeps squeezing you every time. The biggest challenge is only profit, rest everything is manageable.
That was quite candid, but I think the audience are not yet convinced with this answer. Chalo, profit to samajh mein aa hi jata hai. But when you talk about day-to-day operations in business, what challenge and how do you deal with it?
Day to day is the challenge starts from every morning. I mean, human error again. So staff little is the challenge. Tech is okay. Tech is quite helping, so nothing to worry about it. Challenges grows with every time because of the weather, because of the attitude, with the nature of our the transport problems, the communication gap between the staff, the ego access between the staff, because the staff who came is on a higher level and the higher is not working is on the same level. So managing their egos at that level is really sometimes very tough.
I understand. So again, we're talking about HR problems, human problems, and I think humans are like the makers or the destroyers of any business. More the human intervention, the slower the business gets. I think we need to automate stuff where is very, very next to no human intervention, and I think that's where the scale really comes in. Don't you agree with this?
Automation is really good, but I always believe a human has made AI. AI has not made human. So always this will never change in years and centuries. We are saying AI is coming, but who's getting the AI? Humans are getting the AI. AI is not getting the human. So this is going to be there. It's a helpful. I believe it's a helpful. AI is a helpful tool. It is not a complete tool. So this which is going to be there.
AI is not everything. Yes. Pranay, are you ready for the next question? Well, how do you deliver speed and innovation in the gifting model that spans, you've been doing D2C, you've been doing B2B, you've been doing retail as well. So, how do you kind of manage speed? So, say today you've been doing a particular SKU and you have about 100 odd quantity in stock. And tomorrow, like you said, you receive a 20,000 piece order. How do you manage the speed considering you're already in retail, B2B, and a lot of stuff? So, I think that must be a big challenge for you.
So first of all, whenever we want to launch a new product, we make sure that it's omni-channel, right? It has to work in quick commerce, e-commerce, and B2B. Because you never know, because B2B, you get an order today and then you get an order after 3 months. There's no consistent daily orders. And we always overstock. We always order for 1 quarter, but try to order more than that. We have 3 buying cycles in a year. Okay, so we try to order for the next 5 to 6 months at least, because you never know. Randomly at the end of any quarter, the corporate gives a really large order. And even during sale periods, we see a crazy, like, I'll tell you, there was this one time where an influencer posted a video and we sold 25,000 speakers on one weekend on Amazon. So such random things can happen. You do remain in a limbo period for some time when such events happen, and you have to manage it.
So when you say there is sudden spike in orders, sudden demand that comes in where you're not prepared sometimes, and you also said that you have 3 cycles in a year to get your products in place. Now, my question to you would again be is how do you really define what SKU, what quantity, and when should be purchased? So do you have some data that backs you up to make your decisions, or is it, what kind of system or what data backing do you have to reorder your products?
So in e-commerce, there's something known as DRR, daily run rate. So we know a particular SKU sells an X pieces per day. So it's very easy to do that kind of projection. But I think for B2B, the projection is mostly gut feel. There's no real way to know.
So that's the real AI here. AI doesn't work in AI. So Samitji says in a very candid way that AI does not work in B2B industry. So यहाँ पर इंसान ही काम आएगा, उसका दिमाग काम आएगा. Interesting. Pranay, you wanted to add some?
इंसान काम आएगा, उसकी पॉजिटिव सोच काम आएगी, कल ऑर्डर आ ही जाएगा.
Well, randomly, some company has a budget left. They're like, okay, chalo, le lo. Like,
Lovely, lovely. Yeah. I think this is a conversation I've been really longing for in quite some time now, and it's hit at the right time. Well, moving forward, Mr. Riaz, do you really use tech in your business? If yes, what sort of tech are you using? And has tech really played any role in scaling your supply chain for the gifting and the distribution model?
So it will be very surprising for you to understand that an FMCG distributor uses tech. So not just the billing portals or anything, there are a few places where companies also need us for sample distribution. So I'll just give you an example. There was sample distribution happening by an ex-company for their products, and they used to send these locally to their general trade distributors or local distributors everywhere across India. The product, there is a MRP product that is available in the market, and a sample will have not for sale free sample. अब वो जो बंदा है सेल्स का बंदा, वो या तो उसको घर पे यूज कर देगा, वो लेके जाके डॉक्टर को देना है, या रिटेल में जो उसको सैंपल यूज करना वो नहीं करेगा, या वो सैंपल बहुत बार इट इज बीन सोल्ड इन द रिटेल, which is a very big compliance issue for these bigger companies. Ke a free sample is getting sold in the retail market on MRP or anything half the price. Now brands, what, when one time there was a Mukesh Bhai had said that data is the new oil. So actually for all of these companies also data is gold. What they want is, we want which end customer the sample has gone to, which of my MRs or the salesperson has got how many units of samples, and where is he distributed it. So we created a portal for that brand, for an FMCG brand for which I am a distributor. That portal, we listed their free samples. Now, since it's a platform where samples are not bought, it is going as free. So you and me can also enter and call for samples, and I have to send it. On backend, we created all of their phone numbers were taken in backend. We created only those people could log in. Their sales guys could log in. They get it OTPs. Then they enter. They put the number of samples they need, for which territory it is needed, for which end customer it is needed. सो दिस इज व्हाट द ब्रांड वांट्स डेटा कि मेरा बंदा अगर मार्केट में जा रहा है तो वो ये सैंपल सही जगह पे यूज कर रहा है और ही इज सेलिंग बैक. सो नाउ all of my sample distribution is tech based. We have created an app. Everything happens through the app. So, and daily MIS reports are shared with the brand. So yes, tech is taking over. There is no, now companies are also coming out of the general concept of sending material, sample distribution material to the retailer or to their wholesale distribution network and then getting it used from them. They are creating a single omni-channel. They are creating a single entity who will handle the whole distribution network for them.
Interesting. Tech in sampling is something that I've heard for the first time. And for me as a business also, it does make sense for me to implement some of your thoughts. And let me see how this can... But I think this is a real important piece of information.
Absolutely.
And can definitely bring a change. I'd like to move to Mr. Naresh over here and ask him this question. As much as the B2B industry is not really predictable, overstocking has been one of the biggest bane of this industry, not a boon. So not understanding when which product sells and not understanding how many SKUs and how much products do I really need to stock at any given point of time has been a real struggle for all B2B resellers, for all B2B distributors and manufacturers. So Nareshji, I'd like to, help me understand, help everybody understand that how are you able to deal with this situation?
Thanks, Aman. Very interesting question. I'll tell you, my new best friend is data. Okay. And the beautiful part of data is, see, we cater to every state in India. We have our own people at across 8 different locations in the country. And every place has a different requirement in terms of X product works in Bangalore. It has absolutely zero response in Delhi. Okay, so there is no uniformity in terms of कि जो यहाँ बिकता है वो वहाँ भी बिकेगा. So the data helps you understand what sells where, what my team needs in that specific city. The advantage of data today is that it's accessible easily to all of us. Even a basic software that all of us must be using, like Tally, gives you a great amount of data. Use it. This is a sincere suggestion that I would like to give all of you all present here. Data helps us to plan better. I completely agree with the fact that, my industry as such, the industry that we all work in is as such that it works on very little predictability. There is a specific product that, we believe that, yaar, ye product, ye saal, jabardast hit hone wala. And at the end of the day, even after the season is over, you realize कि यार मेरे पास ये 10,000 piece पड़ा है. So things like that do happen. But the advantage that data gives you, especially, is what kind of products sell in what kind of region. What clients are asking you for what kind of products at what point of time. And we realized that, the availability of tech was very limited, which was specific to our industry. So we went ahead and created something which was customized for us. We realized that, the biggest problem for us is that we wanted XXX things, data that we wanted at a click of a button. We were not getting one. My team is spread out. My sales team is spread out. I have about 50 people on the field today. I spend 6 months a year traveling, and I want to know where my team is. What are they doing? So we ended up building up a software where at this point of time, I can tell you which colleague of mine is at which city, sitting with which reseller. We've gone so in depth. So data is everything today. Yes, I again agree that it cannot give you a % accuracy. But I'll be very honest in telling you, data has been able to solve about 60-70% of my overstocking issues. Yes, overstocking is a bane. Yes, we plan 1 quarter, 2 quarters in advance. We always overstock, expecting that the markets are going to become better next quarter than they are this quarter. So, you always want to have better numbers because, client wakes up in the middle of the night, tells you, bhai, sab chhod abhi, kya hai stock mein, wo bata. And these are very common trends in the industry, which honestly has not changed in the last 15, 20 years. Yes, clients have moved to a fact where they pre-plan their budgets, everything. But still a majority of the market, gifting is luxury for them. Gifting is a last minute requirement for them. When they wake up at the last minute, event aaj ka hai, unko maal kal chahiye tha. They come to me today saying that mereko maal kal chahiye tha. So these are the reality of the industry. But use data, use the even the basic software that you have available at your disposal. Use it because it is effective. It really helps in understanding, what works, how it works, where it works. Because I think the biggest challenge all of us have is management of funds, because all of us work with different types of clientele. You might be offering credits. Your client has a payment term of anywhere between 15 to 150 days. So managing funds become a big challenge. So managing your stocks is the best way that we can manage this challenge. And how do you manage stocks? Is using your data right. Whatever software that is available with you, use it. You have a lot of softwares available today in forms of even something as cheap as 5,000, 10,000 rupees a year. You have something like Zoho available, Tally available. They give you phenomenal amount of data. Use it. It really helps. It has helped us. Anything that you guys would like to understand more, I'm always available. But this is something I would like to suggest all of y'all. That data is the new best friend, and use it effectively. He will treat you like a new best friend as well. And it does help you in understanding how do you manage your funds better so that you don't overstock too much, and plan in getting more newer products. Like a brand like me, I would always want to get something that is more innovative, something that has more utility. But always there is a challenge of, yaar, fund short hai. So something like this helps you in planning your stocks better, your funds better, your sales better, your seasons better, and also helps in, pre-planning and understanding, how do I take my next season forward.
Fair enough, Nareshji. Thank you so much for that input. Now let's move to the final phase of our conversation. We had to wrap up by 1 o'clock. We are at 4 o'clock. I'm going to take another 5 minutes of yours while we wrap up. So I hope you are patient enough to help us wrap this program. Last question on the last phase, the last quarter, and the last 10 minutes. I like each one of you to take 2 minutes, or maybe lesser. Let it be as crisp as possible because we are running short of time. And the last session is about the road ahead, vision, and collaboration. So my question to all of you would be, what is your single best advice for someone entering the corporate gifting industry? We have a lot of people here in the industry who want to start up, who've already done something, who want to scale, who are struggling with some few challenges in their business. So what would each one of you want to say to the audience here? We'll start with Pranay.
Yeah. So I would suggest that rather than focusing on product, focus on the experience and focus on the niche and become a master of it. Like trying to do all categories at once will not work. But if you understand one category really, really well and deeply, you could have the best pricing, you could have the best products and so on. So yeah, start with what excites you and take it forward. Yeah, that's my advice.
Pranay had to say niche is important. Choose your niche, what suits your business well, what really interests you, do that. Don't be a jack of all and master of none. This is what Pranay had to say. Let's move on to Mr. Riaz.
I would say you should focus on service. Service orientation should be your priority. Work on small number of clients, but work on giving the most impeccable services to your customers. This will create you a better face value. This will give you a better face value in the industry. And by the word of mouth, this makes you go to 4 or 5 or 10 more new customers when you give a good service. So start small, focus on service, focus on small orders, try to build an image, try to build a credibility, and then go big.
Service. So Pranay had niche, choose your niche, and Mr. Riaz had service. Two important things. Let's move to the third one, Mr. Samit.
Yeah, man. You see, my brand is Be Home, right? I always being focused. Be Home means you are together in a home. It's called Be Home. So I always emphasize we should work together. Clients have a lot of budget. We are killing ourselves and giving him cheaper. Let's work together. Enjoy the fruit half together. Client doesn't need that fruit. It's the excess fruit what is we are giving him. So be in a home, be together, work together, collaborate together, and this is where we can work very well.
So Mr. Samit had to say collaborate. When you're working, collaborate amongst yourself rather than giving that benefit to the end customer while you get exploited at your own cost. So collaborate within amongst yourselves and then do business with customers. So we had Pranay who said niche, we had Mr. Riaz who said service, and third we had Mr. Samit who said collaborate. Let's move on to Mr. Dheeraj.
For any newcomer, I would say have a big vision, but start small. Start with baby steps and slowly build your own legacy. But if you want to want to go for a longer run, you have to keep things under your control so that you can make a better decisions in future and go a longer way.
Start small is what you wanted to choose. Go lean. Don't just go out of board, hire 100 people, and then figure out what we need to do. So go as lean as possible. Start small, but stay focused is what Dheeraj has to say. Let's move on to Mr. Naresh. Please make sure the key points I'm going to ask all of you guys after the session. So make sure you remember that. Okay. Let's move to Mr. Naresh.
I think, you know what, don't be a product seller. Be a problem solver. Understand what your strengths are, what your USP that you bring on the table. It does, see, India has moved from an economy जहाँ सिर्फ सस्ता बिकता है, मेरे को 100 रुपए का product दे दो. Gone are those days. You know, today a client is spending, regardless an amount that you can think of, the client is willing to spend. Understand where your strengths lie, work on your strength. You might be making a product which costs 5,000 rupees, does not really matter. There is a market for it. So understand where your market lies, work on your strengths, don't play on your weakness, and understand how you can add value. And don't just sell a product, you know, offer an experience to a client. It is very, very important that, you know, you are, because see, if you become a product seller, you'll always have competition. Okay, if you are a problem solver, you will have a better margin, you'll have a better control with the client, and the client will always come back to you. You might be selling X, he will come back to you for A, B, and C as well. So my suggestion is, you know, understand what your strengths lie, work on them, build on them. You want to run long. I think this is a line which all of us have heard and, you know, read and everything. If you really want to run long, run along with taking people along with you. You will run longer and faster. Go start slow. I completely agree. Start slow, start small. Don't invest in too much of money. But as you keep growing, take people along with you. You know, you will grow better.
So Mr. Naresh had to say, don't sell a product, sell a story. Every product needs to have a story is only when you'll be able to add value to the customer's life. Let me sum this up and let me bring this session to a beautiful end where each one of you guys, all the panelists have been such great hearts and a lot of experience have come to the table today. And let me summarize with that one word that each one said here is Pranay said, choose your niche. Niche is important. Don't do everything. Choose what is right and stay focused. Second, we had Mr. Riaz who said service is everything. Product is nothing. Product definitely is something, but service is more important than the product. Third, we had Mr. Samit who said collaboration is the key. Collaborate with your fellow members and then take the business to the next level. We had Mr. Dheeraj who said start small, go lean, stay focused. Then we had lastly Mr. Naresh who said, what was Mr. Naresh who said? Storytelling. You need to not sell a product, but sell a story that can really, really add value to the customer's life. On that note, let me put a thank you to all the fellow panelists. It was a pleasure to have all of you guys and had a gala time with all of you guys. Thank you so much. Looking forward for such sessions in the near future. Can we have a big round of applause for these lovely panelists?